Greetings, sir and sirettes, and welcome back to From the Depths with me, Lathrix, and of course, welcome back to a bit of a weird video in the sandbox mode, where today we're going to be finishing off the 3 versions of plane, which we're going to be using with the carrier. At the moment, we have the Dart Interceptor, so actually, no, we have 4, then we have the lighter bomber, which uses the penetration depth fuses, and then the heavy bomber, which has been using the multiple Cram cannons. All of them are very close to being finished, and in fact, the heavy Cram bomber has gone through some serious changes since the last time I showed it in a video. So all we're doing today is finishing them off so they're in their final state to be used in the carrier. Now, originally, I wasn't going to make this a video, but I spent so many hours working on the heavy Cram bomber, I've realised I'm not going to get a video done at this rate until the end of the weekend, so hopefully, this is going to be somewhat interesting. Lots of little changes over the course of a few of our craft. So then, the first thing I'm doing is messing around with the block which I didn't really know existed, which is the hologram projector. Now, I already knew about the video screen and a few of the others, and because they share the same model, I kept on thinking they were the same thing. Obviously, very much mistaken. Now, the hologram projector is something really nice for something really simple. You can simply put down text. Now, you can also put down images and everything else, so if I ever wanted to use the corn logo or something else like that and have it flat, we can go with this. But for now, I just want all of the different versions of the Dart to have a simple label. So this is Dart A, and thus it's going to have A on the wings and over here as well, on the rudder. Shouldn't take too much time, hopefully, so I'll just pop those in, we'll see how that looks. After that, we're going to make the engine significantly more efficient, because at the moment, it's going at 180 meters per second, and it's useless at that speed. It's not really gaining anything from it, except for the fact it's draining all of my fuel in seconds. Let's see if we can get the absolute minimum here. Okay, so clearly that is what we're looking for. Fantastic. And a little bit further forwards. A little bit smaller. Okay, I think that should fit just perfectly. Almost to both lines. I want a little bit of a gap at the top, which we just about have. Lovely. Also love the fact you can so easily copy-paste now, which is just lovely. There we are, and turn that positive. Then we sort out the top, and then we can work on our engine. Now thankfully, just like with the Mimics, you can pretty much place these anywhere, with limitations, from anywhere else. So right now we have the hologram projector here, which there is already a gap. I'm going to pop it somewhere like that. Is that a bit too garish? I mean, it is very on the nose. For now I think I'll leave it, but we could always change the colour later, it's not really too much of an issue. But I do want them labelled, just because I want them all to be unique. If I see A going down, I want to know it was A that was destroyed. Plus then, we can make a note if any of their specific AIs are acting better than others or worse than others, since they are all set up slightly differently from each other. Currently, we're going 178, although we are going a circle, which is slightly slowing us down, and we are using a ridiculous amount of fuel, 7,000. This is because this is as fast as this size of engine can really be pushed, and I want it to go the complete opposite. As long as this thing goes above 140, then it should be okay. And the reason why we're so powerful at the moment is we're spamming fuel injectors. These things really give you some extra speed, but instead, we're going to go with some extra combustors, and maybe mess around with some of the others. For now, just the extra combustors, and we'll see what happens. So I'm going to swap 2 lines of injectors for combustors. And now, it's already down to 2,000, but how's our speed? That's fine. That means this can now last 4 minutes in the air. But most importantly, what we can do is we can remove some of our fuel tanks. Now, fuel tanks are actually quite expensive. They're 100 each. Doesn't seem like much, but we do have 9 of these. That's 900 of our tiny cost. It's currently fuel. Yep, there we are. Absolutely fine. Now, it's likely going to be easier to just change the AI on this craft and then call it B, call it C, call it D. I'll just change the text as well when I save them. There is actually one more test I would like to do, and that is changing the autocannons. Sorry, changing our current weapon, which are the assault cannons, into autocannons. A lot of people have recommended this. The shells are faster. They do double the damage per shell, but they fire far slower, and I believe they also have a longer reload. Yeah, double, in fact. I don't think I'll end up using them, but we'll see. We'll just go extreme and swap all of our guns for them and see how effective it is. I'm also tempted to just add more guns. It would not be difficult at all. Also, would that look better? That would look significantly better, yes. Hopefully that doesn't affect them too much. It shouldn't do, since I don't really have a firing arc anyway. But it wouldn't be difficult to add 2 more guns to each of these. That's going to increase the cost by 400. That's not that much, especially since we just lost a lot of the fuel. Now, the reason why the fuel being removed is so good is because, remember, these are going to be created over and over again. They're essentially being treated like a weapon. They're going to be destroyed repeatedly. So remaking the fuel tanks, only to have them destroyed perhaps with half fuel or less, with such a high fuel capacity, is just a waste of resources. Not that I've been particularly efficient anyway, but it tends to be better just to have all the fuel on the carrier, which is more likely to survive the fights. And if the carrier dies, we're dead anyway. Or I could just check the stats. So these have more firepower overall, 0.34, these are 0.3. The assault cannon's less inaccurate, which is actually surprising to me, but there we go. Ammo per second, 2.6 versus 2.1. It's not a big difference, but since we are using so few little bits of ammo storage, it is nice that these don't need more ammo. Now, of course, you can actually siphon ammo from the carrier, just like you'd siphon fuel during a fight. You don't need to even be that close to it. Again, similar to fuel. But I think I'm going to stick with the assault cannons. Okay, they're all finished, except for the fact I forgot to mirror a lot of the text, which means they were all like this. Yeah, so I just need to quickly go through them again, but now they are all different in terms of their AI, and all I've really done is I've made it so they try to go to different altitudes, they go different distances away from the target, they get to different distances towards the target, and that's pretty much that. Now, one thing I am considering, I remember doing this before and not liking it, we could add one more piece of armor here, just to round off the end. At the moment, it just stopped quite abruptly. Yeah, I just don't like that. I prefer the abrupt ending, weirdly. Use the correct paint, though. Actually, yeah, I do prefer that. Oh, that's annoying. Okay, so I'm gonna have to go through all the craft now, add that little extra section there, and make sure the text is mirrored, and then the darts are done. And so we move on to our next aircraft. Okay, another thing, I really don't like how this looks, with them both being the correct way around if you look at them, but I don't like the fact they're really asymmetrical. I mean, so are these, but that's not so much of a big deal. So I'm going to be removing one of these holograms. So now it's only on the left. That's all. Okay, now I can't decide at this point if I'm going to have just the B there, or am I going to remove the wings as well, because I don't even like that so much. The thing is, though, I want it to be obvious from a distance, and during a fight, it's going to be a blur. So for now, keeping the wings and just the one on the left, but tell me in the comments, how would you like to see this? And I may add images later, but for now, this is the finished deal. Does exactly what it sets out to do, extremely cheap, takes out the jets pretty easily, and it will die if you look at it with a slightly menacing glare. Next up, we're looking at the Cram Heavy Bomber. Now, you may be able to see a big difference between these two. The one on the left, despite its size, survives less. The one on the right is much better armor, just much better placement of the armor. It has no externals in terms of rudders, ailerons, anything like that, and so it's almost immune to weak flak fire. They're both going to be killed if they get hit by multiple cram shells or something, but also, this one is only 2k volume. That one is over 3k. This is a third smaller, the same cost, and it does the same amount of damage, and survives better against everything I've tested out. This one has more engine power, so it is slightly hungrier for fuel. Actually, no, it's not even true. This one isn't more fuel hungry. It only has 2 jets at the back. Because it's so much lighter, the speed is actually about the same for about the same amount of fuel. Now, the front is the least aerodynamic thing in the world. Originally, when I was remaking this bomber, I was going to make it look more like a plane. Then I read so many comments of people liking the original because it has its own character, it's weird looking and not just a normal plane design, and they just liked it because how silly it looked, let's be perfectly honest. So I tried to keep the same style. It's actually been built pretty much from scratch, except for the cram cannons. And the main thing I'm testing today, though, is the cram cannons themselves. I want to see if I can split the cram cannons. Now, already, they're deadly. They go straight through the target, and although it doesn't seem like the delay between the shots is that much, it is enough delay that one hits, breaks something apart, then the next goes through, and then keeps on damaging all the way to the core. But I think it'd be better if it split its fire into 2 distinct shots. So what I'm going to be doing is using the aim point selection, which is over here, and setting the reset to its absolute minimum value. So if I just go like this, mainframe. Oh, if I actually add the card, that might work so I can show you. We have this. Max time before changing targeted block. Set that to 1. Sadly, you can't put it below that. Even if you manually change the number, it just resets to 1. And then we have an over 1 second delay between the first few cram shells and the other few cram shells. So after the first are fired, there's a 1 second delay, the aim point will then choose a new target, and then the rest will fire as well. At the moment, there is already a delay. It's essentially the ones at the front fire first, and then it slowly goes backwards, which I've realised we could have done and make more sense. And that's why there's a stagger. But this time I'm staggering them into 2 different clusters. I'm not good at explaining things, so I'm just going to see if this works by messing around with its stats. First test. Now, there is the distinct possibility that the clusters will be split up into 3 rather than 2, depending on how the 1 seconds intersect. Sadly, they went after very similar targets there, but whoa. AI dead. It worked. It definitely hit something which caused a chain reaction, so the Kraken is taken out in 1 shot. Trebuchet, meet test. Test, Trebuchet. Oh no, they're going after really similar targets here. They're definitely going after other targets, but they're gonna probably explode in the same place because of the shields and everything else. No, they're not. Okay, so one has damaged 1 turret, in fact, turned half of it off, and the other one has seared all the way into the core. This time it's split a bit, that's fine. Oh, this time removing the middle turret completely and turning off the back turret as well. Yep, it has no barrels. So that shot completely removed 2 of the weapons. And there's the rest of the weapon now detonating. Okay, that was a good enough test. So I think, really, is that this is going to struggle versus very heavily armored targets like the Bulwark, or things with heavy armor, but things with exposed weapons like that just then, it's just then remove the barrels from you and completely remove the front weapon in 1 attack run. Would it have really benefited either of these hits if there was more firepower behind it? With this one, sure, it would have maybe actually deleted the weapon completely, but this is now so inaccurate, it's much less threatening. And the other one, it doesn't really matter if more firepower came through, the weapon's been completely removed. So this is like an extra. If there's lots of vulnerable weapons or light armor, I feel like this will just do better and it will be more reliable. Against things like the Bulwark with heavy armor and lots of stacked armor, it's probably best to have all of them hit the same place because it might need to go through multiple layers to do anything of value. Also, this is more fun. Just explosions everywhere, rather than just in 1 small location. So let's stick with this, the 2 clusters. My speech is already going. I can't sleep at the moment. I can't talk. So let's just make some changes to the outside of this thing, and then we can call it done. I don't want it to be any wider, because right now this fits on the carrier a lot better than the old version. It's 3 thinner on both sides, so 6 total. Obviously this thing needs to look better than it currently does, so I'm thinking is we kind of go with the fact it kind of looks like a missile, and we have wings at the top here, just using mimics, then 2 at the back as well. Fins, I guess, is what I should really call them. And then 2 very small ones, 1 here, and 1 on the other side. Just to give it some definition. Right now, I don't really want to do anything with the back section. Although it's its weak spot, it's actually decently heavily armoured. The middle is extremely well armoured, and the front is essentially immortal all the way up to here. If it loses thrusters on the front, it's perfectly fine and able to move since it adds backups on the back, and vice versa. It just can't lose the jets. The jets are the only real way this thing goes down from the sky. So, let's see if we can make this thing look better slightly, with minimal extra stuff added. Again, I don't want the volume to increase. Since some people are asking me, why do I care so much about volume, the reason is, simply put, there is a volume limit in battles, and if you want to field everything and allow the enemy to field everything at once, which is far more entertaining, keeping to certain volume limits is the best way of doing that. I know that the other bomber looks a bit like a penguin, but this one looks even sillier. I kind of like that. Yeah, let's stick with that. I might just leave it as it is. It is now essentially a missile. I might call it the missile. I don't know what to call it otherwise. It is it is a weapon. There's the thing. It is the weapon for the carrier. It costs about as much as one Cram cannon turret. In fact, it's less than one of the ones on the Cram cannon cruiser. So if it's lost, it's like losing a turret, and it's just a weapon. It's a flying, very angry weapon. Ooh, I did not place that one far enough down. I wanted it to link up with this. Okay, so changing that first. Just one last proper fight this time. God mode is off. The bomber versus the plunderer. Oh, that was a lovely first hit. Damaging one of the turrets, completely removing another, and I think it removed one of the anti-air weapons as well. Just about dodging those missiles. Why is the split fire so much more obvious now, rather than the tests earlier? Sure. Now I'll do the thing I wanted to do earlier when I was explaining the darn thing. More anti-air weapons removed. Now, this thing is more vulnerable to being hit by crams because it is so much more stable than it used to be. It's no longer rolling or anything like that to turn, because I hated how that looked in the original design. Hard to see what damage was dealt then, since it fired at the same time. Other than the main weapons, though, it is pretty much in tatters. How have you missed the main weapons? They're huge. Definitely lost one of the Cram cannons. Once again, how are you missing these three every time? If only Aimpoint could let you select things like that, rather than just random blocks these days. Oh, 2 damaged. Okay, so it's dead. Yep, that was pretty lovely. I definitely prefer the staggered fire. And you know what? It looks terrible, but it looks unique, and I kind of love it now. It looks so much like a missile. So then, on to the last of our basic aircraft, which is the other bomber type. Okay, I've just altered the jet. It's no longer quite as fuel efficient as it was before, but it is now going at 120 meters per second. It's using just a little bit less fuel than the darts do, so that's pretty darn fine, especially considering this thing is a lot heavier than the darts. Now, one thing I was considering is removing these wings or replacing them with mimics. Well, more importantly, replacing them with mimics. But now, so many people have said, you've basically made a penguin, I kind of want to keep them as they are, as silly as it is, to keep this as the penguin. So I think I will be leaving these wings as silly as they look, though I do kind of want to reinforce them similar to the bottom on the top as well, just add a bit more defense. I've also went ahead and changed the exhaust, so it's no longer just a little hole there and then just a pipe, it's now using the exhaust block. So reinforce the wings, change the jets, then I want to add more to the top. It just looks a bit too dull, it's too flat all the way along, just adding something would be good. Now, as for the shell, I don't think I'll be changing anything. And that's why. It does exactly as it should. How did it leave that bit alive? Well, that was bizarre. And that was sadly a really poor shot. But yep, it can go through multiple layers of armor, it detonates, if it hits anything important, it's gone. I did do a little bit of testing with frag as well, and honestly, fragments on this type of shell do really, really well. But I like explosives, so we're just going to keep it as is. Still super cheap. We can still get more than 3 of these for the same price as 1 of the larger Cram bombers, and it's more specialised. So yeah, the Cram shell stays. I do need to armour up the bottom a bit as well. Aw, that was really cool though, being there like that. Very nice indeed. So yeah, keeping the shells. Now, let's see if we can make this look a little bit better on top. I mean, that looks proper stupid, but I am proper stupid. So it fits. I quite like it. Maybe I'll keep that. I still don't know what to do with the rest, though. There's just so much space here, but I don't really want to increase the volume. I can't think of how I'm going to use mimics here. Looks like it's halfway through a belly flop. Yep, it's the penguin. I'm just going to call it the penguin. It's officially named the penguin. So we have the penguin bomber, because, you know, which kind of sounds like we're either bombing penguins or using penguins as bombs. Then we have our Cram bomber without a name. Then we have the dart and the dart missile version. Really basic things I've just done. Added some extra armor to the bottom. I've armored up the jet a bit more. It's still going to be a weak point, but hopefully a little bit less now. Apparently we caused the enemy to sink with those last few shots. And I've also brought this forwards. So it's a bit fatter now. And has a weird bent back. It's aging very badly. But it should be a little bit better this way. I think. Oh, no, even this has a weird snoot to it. At least the snoot isn't drooping. I can't think of much else I really want to do with this. I like the idea of it looking like a penguin now, so I don't want to change the wings. Even just moving this forward has made it look a little bit better, but what else can I do, really? I'll keep on messing around with ideas, but I feel like this one isn't really going to change all that much, except for having somewhere for the character to sit, which isn't completely exposed. Only mostly exposed. Because this way I can jump out nice and easily. As we sink to our deaths. Whee! We're a dart now. Take that, water. Or what it could do is completely rehaul how the top is and have it sort of curved all the way. This way, there's only a 1 wide section at the very top, which is flat, rather than the 2 wide, which is what was causing the looks to be so obvious. Just recolor it all, so there's more of a distinction. Yeah, that looks way better, actually. Maybe that's the simpler option, just stop it from being so flat. That is reducing our armor a little bit, but not massively. With all the talk about trying to make the top of the design a bit more streamlined looking, I completely forgot about the whole reloading issue. So now, what I've done is I've changed it so it no longer goes 1,000 meters away, instead it goes only 700, there we go, turning already. This means it's heading towards the target and away from the target a lot less per time, and as long as it can still fire now, it's still fully reloaded each time, which is fine. So, far more damage, far less time exposed to the enemy. That was a lovely shot. Very clean. First shot destroyed those, second shot that, lovely. And I'll keep on tweaking that until it's perfect. Though we do want some leeway just in case the enemy moves towards us. I think for now I'm going to call it as it is. I shaved off an extra 50 meters and it's still fine. In fact, it's reloaded for about 2 seconds still before it reaches the target to fire. But even at that point, I just wanted some leeway just in case the enemy moves towards us or something like that. I've flattened off the top. Well, sorry, I've rounded off the top a bit more, made it look a bit more secure. Because this is very heavily armoured, and I want it to look like that. The bottom's more heavily armoured, the jet's now more efficient. And although it's still a bit boring looking at the front, I think that's it. It still looks like a penguin. It's going to be our penguin bomber, and that is all 3 of our designs now ready for our carriers completely. Except, of course, for the detection system, but that's going to be added in the next patch when I'm certain I want to do things in a certain way. And with that, thank you so much for watching. If you have enjoyed today's video, then of course, likes, favourites, shares, comments, all that good stuff helps out me, helps out the channel, and most importantly, shows that From the Depths is a series you wish to see continued in the future. In the next episode, I swear, we're going to be finishing off the carrier as well, now that we have 3 different types of unit we can use with it.